Greetings, YouTube. I am a child of the Cold War, born in 1964, and I grew up knowing to the very marrow of my bones that I was going to die in a rain of nuclear fire. That is just what was going to happen. I had completely bought into the government narrative of the danger of the Soviet Union and China, and to a lesser extent, and that it was an inevitability. The propaganda was completely sold to me. This was, assisted by the fact that I suffer from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So these things all fed right into my personal issues and just sent me into a very dark place. And that existential dread didn't begin to be alleviated until Bill Clinton came to power. And it wasn't really until his second term that I came to realize that it wasn't going to happen. That I wasn't going to die to a rain of nuclear fire. That the world was going to continue and I would see the 20th century end and the 21st century begin. Even though I also firmly believed I wouldn't live to be older than 25. I can't tell you where that came from. I don't know. But I always believed I wouldn't live past 25. And I made peace with the world. And when I did, I was really surprised. And now I'm 52. With the advent of the Bush-Cheney years, my fear of nuclear war returned. But again, with the election of a Democratic president, that fear was alleviated. And again, by the second term of Obama, I had pretty much no concerns that nuclear war was ever going to be an option. Well, now El Cheeto is in power, and the Grand Dorito himself has shown a real desire to want to push that button. And I read a great little description of the situation at hand in the thread I'll be linking to, which is from Metafilter. This gleefully ignorant con artist sleazeball with skin thinner than graphene, driven by anecdote, driven by whatever happens to be on Fox News when he gets his TV time, driven by personal favors, personal compliments, and personal revenge against personal slights, has become president and has not changed at all, except that now he is the most powerful person in the world. And that's the situation we're in. Now, I realize that at the moment, he and Putin are in some deeply involved relationship with each other, and I'm sure that El Cheeto is blowing Putin on a regular basis. But he's the most unstable person to ever hold that office. And I'm including Reagan, who at the end was probably suffering from the early stages of Alzheimer's. And he still has his thumb on that nuclear button. And there's not a thing that we can do about it. We're not getting him out of there anytime soon. And if we did, he would be replaced by Pence, who is saner, but deeply socially conservative, so still really dangerous, and smart enough to get really horrible policies put into power while he remained in office. Though I think that Pence is less likely to push the button, though he is a social conservative Christian, so maybe he would want to bring around the end times. I'm not positive. Some of these Christians really actually want to push things to the point where the end times arrive because they believe that their Savior, Jesus, is going to show up and drag them all to heaven, though technically, I believe it's only 144,000 that will be saved. Because remember, Christianity was laid down in the Bronze Age, and in the Bronze Age, 144,000 people was a lot of people at a time when there are very few followers of Christ. before the term Christian had a meaning. When he was just some radical Jewish person spouting off and making the social conservatives of his time really uncomfortable. Also, really socialist. So I've never quite grasped how the Christians thought they were going to do really well. Is it going to be like a lottery? You just like is there a past the post requirement that so many, if you've scored so many pious points, you're in the bidding, so you get to be randomly chosen to go to heaven? Or is it going to be just some death match where 144,000 get to go and the rest will all be left behind, those that are still alive? I don't know. I don't even want to watch. But so long as the Grand Dorito is in power, I'm really afraid that nuclear use is something that could very well happen. He's dangerously unstable. He is very good at othering any group that is not American. He believes in utter nonsense. He believes that climate change is a plot by the Chinese. He believes that there was huge amounts of voter fraud that is the reason that he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, the largest margin ever. When in actuality, the kinds of voter fraud he's discussing is close to non-existent. I believe the last numbers I heard were, in one study, 150 million votes cast. There were 34 cases that were prosecuted for voter fraud. And that's not even counting how many that were actually found guilty. That's just 34 cases that were prosecuted out of 150 million votes. So, yeah, the voter fraud type he's discussing is a fiction. And the only reason he keeps talking about it is he needs to keep it fresh in the minds of his base, who are even more ignorant than he is and will listen to anything he says as gospel, rolling right into the socially conservative belief in a theocracy. Apparently, he is their current savior. Maybe the new mythology is that El Cheeto will lead them to the promised land, which is equally terrifying. But yeah, once again, the nuclear dread of the modern world has returned to us. It's just that this time, the finger on the button is orange.